So, Assassin's Creed Shadows. The newest installment in the AC franchise has just been revealed and it's kicking up quite a storm online, but not for any legitimate reasons, as seen on my last video for my thoughts on that. But yes, the dream Assassin's Creed game being set in feudal Japan is coming, and there is a lot to be excited about, but also a lot to be skeptical about. So for this video, I'm just going to talk to you about what I hope to see in this game, but also what I'm afraid of. And when I say afraid, I mean obviously how Ubisoft operates and their monetization tactics. For starters, I just want to say that the title of the game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, is pretty good. I liked it as soon as I saw the leak that said that that was going to be the name of the game, and I thought, you know what, that's actually a really good title. I really loved AC Mirage as the title. I thought that was sick. Valhalla was a little bit generic, and I was afraid that they were going to go down the same path of sort of generic naming structure for AC Shadows that would be in line with Japanese culture or histories, but I'm really glad that that's not what they've chosen to do. The title of the game seems to be more in line with where the narrative is going to go and even the gameplay. For starters, I'm hopeful about the story. It's always going to be the story that I love most in Assassin's Creed. You know, the gameplay has always been amazing and it's always been the king in terms of what you're actually doing, but the story is what really binds things together. Playing as Yasuke has so much potential for the story. I think the narrative will play out as him doing some pretty bad stuff. I think that we see that in the cinematic reveal trailer. He's assisting in burning down a village with the army, and I think he's even killing some civilians. And as the narration in the trailer says, it's Naoe asking him, do you want to continue that cycle of violence? You know, if he wants to be part of the oppression that he has been victim to himself, because of course he was a slave. The story will then show Yasuke being introduced to the Assassin's Brotherhood and their beliefs on freedom, and he'll have a change of heart, which is why he'll then work with them. I think that aspect of the story has a lot of potential for a redemption type character arc, which I don't think we've seen for any main assassin in the franchise so far. I think as well that Yasuke may have done something or killed someone who's close to Naoe, and she will have to learn to work and then forgive and then trust this man, which opens up a whole new can of worms on story potential. On the topic of Naoe, I think there's a lot of potential in exploring the shinobi's way of life and their culture and how that mixes in and relates to the assassins. I don't know exactly what they have in store for her. I know they've revealed who her father is as being a real historical figure, and that could have some story potential intrigue in it, but I'm not exactly sure where they're going with Naoe, and that is making me a little bit hopeful that they're holding their cards close to their chest with her, but who knows. The second thing I'm hopeful for is obviously the setting of feudal Japan. It's what's been requested since time immemorial, but what's most hopeful about it is the actual world design itself. The pre-release has talked about global illumination and the different seasons in the games and how that will affect gameplay such as stealth. I'm so hopeful that we will have a world where you actually have to react to it. I'm also hopeful that the world is not going to be a bloated mess. They have actually said that the game is roughly the same size as AC Origins with its map. However, AC Origins map was filled with a lot of empty space in the form of the deserts, which I thought was really good, and it sold the fantasy of the world of Egypt, and it really did hammer in just how big the scale of the deserts were, how little intrigue there actually was inside of them. So it'll be interesting to see if AC Shadows can fill in those same spots with things worth actually being there. It probably goes without saying because Assassin's Creed has always achieved this, so it's not really worth being in doubt about, but I'm excited that this game is going to teach me more about feudal Japan, especially at this period in time, and the cultures and beliefs of the people. The other thing I'm hopeful for is the stealth in the game. As previously mentioned, they have said that the world will dictate how you approach certain encounters. But more than that, I'm hopeful that a lot of the lessons that have been learned from AC Mirage and the community's fondness for the game and its focus on stealth and tools, I'm hopeful that Ubisoft Quebec has heard that feedback and has incorporated that into AC Shadows. Most importantly of all is that you are playing as a character who is dedicated to stealth and is a shinobi. So I'm hopeful that they have really leaned in on the stealth for her to make her kind of like a glass cannon, which is not very good at combat abilities or fighting and has a low health, but really has to focus on stealth to get the job done, and therefore the stealth gameplay has to be good, because if it's not good, then no one's going to play as her. Now we get to the part of the video where I become a negative Nancy. I'm really concerned that this game is going to be a continuation of Odyssey's RPG gameplay, where the weapon you're using, the stats of the weapon and your gear dictate your lethality. Much is being said about how you shouldn't have to wear specific gear or have a specific weapon or even a specific engraving on that weapon, and then on top of that have these specific perks just to be able to even one-hit kill an enemy during stealth. Unfortunately, Quebec has had this system check in place in both of their games, being Syndicate and Odyssey, requiring you to have your items and your tools upgraded to match the level of your enemy. I'm doubtful that they will remove this entirely because, as has been stated, this is an RPG Assassin's Creed game. I just hope that they really dial that back in. I have my doubts about the combat as well. I think this goes to what I was saying with the stealth and the gear. I doubt Ubisoft Quebec will make a good combat system that does not rely on your gear score. The combat in the RPG games has been more in line with something like Dark Souls than it has with previous installments. Enemies have a certain hitbox that you need to interact with, and I've got nothing against this combat style. I just felt like in Odyssey it was dreadful because of the spongy health bars of enemies, and in AC Mirage it was just easily the worst aspect of the gameplay, but in a way that also reinforced the necessity for stealth, so actually I don't really care too much about it. They've talked about all the different weapons that Yasuke will be able to use, and I'm just thinking to myself, cool, so long as I don't have to constantly switch them out and I can just use what I want to use. It goes without saying, but I'm very concerned for the parkour and wider traversal of the game. Based on the cinematic trailer, it didn't really look like that there were any built-up towns or cities where parkour would be a necessity. There's been a distinct lack of parkour mentioned in a lot of the pre-release articles. The thing they've only really mentioned is Noway's access to a grappling hook, and it's much better than the grappling hook in Syndicate because they've said that this one actually has physics to it, but at the same time it will completely negate climbing up certain structures looking for the appropriate route up. I just really hope that they've learned their lesson on the grappling hook from Syndicate and they haven't just completely trivialized parkour. I'll raise my hand and just say I'm not very knowledgeable on Japanese history at this time, so I don't really know if there's any cities where it could be designed like Baghdad was in AC Mirage to facilitate parkour, but just the lack of any footage of that or any talk of that in the press release has me really concerned that we're going to get parkour more in line with AC Odyssey, where it was just a neat little feature, but for the most part you're just walking around and riding on your horse. I think they have mentioned that Yasuke will not be able to parkour as fluently as Naoe, and this raises some concerns from a design perspective because they'll have to create all of these locations with two playstyles and approaches in mind. I'm just really concerned that they're going to have to simplify the parkour then to allow for that design structure to remain coherent. I'm also really concerned that we're going to get a lot of mythological nonsense in this game. They have stated in the pre-release puff pieces that mythology will play a part, but I just hope that it will be better incorporated in the game like it was in Origins than Odyssey, for example. The incorporation of mythology in Valhalla, I'm still a bit iffy on whether or not I liked it, but at the very least they had an explanation for it and how it fit with the wider Assassin's Creed canon, whereas I felt that Odyssey just didn't care and they just did a hand wave and went, oh, it was an apple of Eden, sure. But knowing Quebec's history, I have my doubts on whether or not they'll be able to pull off the mythology in a satisfying manner. If I had it my way, I just wouldn't include any of that mythology stuff in general, but it seems that that's the way the story is going down, and there's not much we can really do about it. I mentioned before how I was really excited about the story potential. However, I have my doubts that Ubisoft will actually be able to stick the landing. Ubisoft has struggled with the narratives in their games now for a number of years, and I'm doubtful that this will be the turning point. What makes me especially doubtful is the fact that in the pre-release articles they've said that the order in which you play missions is going to be non-linear, so you as a player will be able to pick where you go and what mission you play, and especially which character you want to play that mission as. I think that this open approach will lack a lot of the fine-tuning and oversight in the narrative that would be seen in a more linear and dictated one. My biggest complaint with the narrative in AC Valhalla was not actually the length, but it was the lack of structure to it. I felt that with some of the story arcs, it could have totally been side missions and not necessary for the main story, or alternatively, they could have happened much earlier in the story so that the latter half of the game included those story arcs that were much more urgent and pertinent to the wider narrative. I'm also concerned about the tone in which Ubisoft Quebec will tell the story, because if you look at their previous track record with Syndicate and Odyssey, there's a lot of irreverence they have towards their writing style, that everything is a joke and that it should be crammed with as many jokes as possible. I really hope that Quebec doesn't continue down that path with Shadows. The premise of it and the story outline as seen in the cinematic trailer is not really conducive to that cringy Marvel movie style approach. And last but not least, I'm very much in doubt that this game will have any sort of fair microtransactions and monetization. The last few games have just had these egregious in-game storefronts, and I don't think AC Shadows will be any different. I'll be totally honest here and say that I actually don't have an issue with there being a pre-order mission. Ubisoft has done this since AC3, I think, so I find it weird that it's all of a sudden a massive issue in the gaming zeitgeist when it's been happening for like 10 years at least. I also don't really care about the different editions of the game, including more or less stuff. It's just the pricing of it which I think is a fair criticism. No, my main concern is the actual in-game storefront itself and locking gear and items and weapons behind a paywall. I don't want to see a repeat of AC Valhalla where in the end it felt like there was more items in the store than there were in the actual game itself. I'm also very skeptical about Assassin's Creed Infinity, the hub application for the upcoming AC games. Leaks have said that it will have a battle pass system that the player will pay for, and I just think to myself, what the hell is a battle pass doing in a single player game? So yeah, that's my hopes and doubts about AC Shadows. It'd be interesting to look back on this video in a year's time when the game is well and truly out and the honeymoon period is over, and just see what the game did and didn't do, and if my fears were unfounded or if I was spot on the money. Ultimately, I do hope for the best for this game. I don't have any hatred for Ubisoft Quebec, even though they've not made any AC games that I would consider great. As a fan of the franchise, I just want what's best, and fingers crossed come release date the game is released to good reception and a strong player support.